Welcome to the Decide to Move podcast, helping entrepreneurs like you make smart, pivotal shifts in your life and business. Tune in each episode for inspiring stories from brilliant business minds and trailblazers to find out how they made their big moves and how you can too. Now here's your host, author, speaker, business strategist, CEO, and founder of Decide to Move, Monica M. Bijou.
This episode is brought to you by Redefine Your Dreams for 2021 one-day workshop on December 19th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Get additional details and register at events.decidetomove.com/redefine your dreams. That's event.decidetomove.com/redefine your dreams. Look for additional details in the show notes. Now, on with the show.
Hello, everyone. So I am excited that I am back with you for another episode of Decide to Move. Today, I have an amazing guest that's here with me. He has on a mission to help small businesses learn how to leverage everything that they're going through, take their crisis, take circumstances, situations, and actually be able to learn how to grow from it. And this is not a person who's read a whole bunch of books and different things like that to say, I know I have stuff to teach you. He has his own life experiences, so that way he can help small businesses just like you make pivotal shifts in their life and their business so that they can be lucrative in what they do. Without further ado, and give me a round of applause as I welcome Tony G. How are you doing today, Tony?
Great. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Most definitely. And I think, so many people want to hear exactly what you have to say, because right now, as you know, we're going through a pandemic. People are going through so many different ebbs and flows. One minute we're on a quarantine. Next, we're able to go out and be free. Next, we're, required to wear a mask and be on shutdown again. And there's so many different things that people are going through. And, now, of course, with a lot of racial tension and everything else like that, people are feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling lost. They're feeling confused. And those that have a business, their business is suffering from it. And you have had your own life experiences where you have dealt with things in your life, personal and professional, that made you say, you know what, enough is enough. And I have to learn everything I need to, so that way I can help other people not have to be stuck in their space.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So I grew up in small business. So, I was 12 years old. My parents had a bakery, Italian bakery. They had amazing food, amazing bakers. Unfortunately, they didn't know all they needed to know about growing a business. And so when I was just 12 years old, that business failed, and I found myself, homeless, essentially. We lost everything we had. My parents, myself, we moved in with my oldest sister, who's 18 years older than me. We moved in there, and then we kind of rebuilt ourselves and kind of, had a fresh start again. So years later, I ended up going into the University of Connecticut to get a business degree, because I thought, hey, I'm going to redeem the past, essentially. I'm learning this now. I wasn't thinking that concretely back then, of course, but I was like, now I'm examining myself, and that's really what happened. So I went back, and after I graduated, I started another bakery with my parents. And this one was really cool. We were able to take a cake, put a photo on it, and mail it anywhere in the country and have it arrive perfectly. And so it was really cool. It ended up being a promotional products company and a gift company. And so we ended up getting celebrity clients. We mailed cakes for Jennifer Lopez and Jay-Z. We did cakes for IBM as corporate gifts, Microsoft, a whole bunch of really top-flight companies. We won Best New Product at the New York Incentive Show. So we were doing much, much better than the previous business. But unfortunately, I had areas I didn't know about either. And so what I find happens with so many businesses is they fail. In fact, 70% of small businesses fail. And I became one of those statistics. This time, however, it was worse because I was older, of course, and I was newly married and had a baby on the way. And so that was kind of how I started my marriage, basically bankrupt, living in I have a second older sister, living in her basement. And so I said to myself, clearly, I don't know what I'm doing. But I also said, who does know? And so that's when I thought, well, I'm going to work with the best companies in the world. And so I made that my mission. And so I had a decade-long journey of working with some of the best companies in the world, like Google, Ford Motor Company, ADP, AutoNation, a bunch of, actually, in fact, 12 Fortune 500 companies and over 10,000 small businesses. And then at the end of that, roughly 8 years ago, I said, I want to take what I learned and bring that back to small businesses because so many of them fail. And I don't want what happened to me to happen to so many. So I want to do what I can to what I call democratized marketing. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell and how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, and I like that, and that's one of the things, like with my company, Decide to Move, it's like you learn how to make like lemon out of lemonade or lemonade out of lemons, as they often say. But, I want to go back for a moment when you talk about everything that you experienced just with your parents from the very beginning, where you lost everything, you was homeless. Can you go through some of the emotions and things that you were feeling as you watched that? Like, how old were you when you were watching these things unfold?
Yeah, so I was 12. And so, it was a kind of a pivotal point in my life. And I remember just sitting down at a desk one time saying that I was literally thinking I'm going to be a huge success today because I don't want to be like this in the future. So I'm literally like, just a kid thinking that, and I remember, it was embarrassing at times too. I remember, I was going into high school. And I didn't have the things that everyone else had. We didn't even have a car for a period of time. My dad was literally riding a bike to get to work because he had a job to help us rebound. And so it was a really challenging time. It was definitely a pivotal point in my life that kind of set the course for the rest of my life, really, my mission in life, my purpose.
Yeah. And so when you went to school, what things do you feel like your education taught you compared to your experience that you had from seeing hands-on from these other companies?
Yeah. So college, you're talking about college, right? When I got my degree in entrepreneurship. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when I went to college, they taught you, hopefully there's no college teachers here, but what they teach you to do is how to be an employee in a big company. They'll actually teach you how to run a company or what it takes. And so they really teach you to become a cog in the wheel. And so you're totally unprepared for what it takes to actually run a business. And then a lot of times, and I had a business degree, a lot of times it's even worse for other people because they're great at whatever they do. Maybe they're a physician, maybe they're an accountant. Well, that's probably not the best example because that's business, but they're really good tradesperson, et cetera. They really have no training at all in business. So what I find in general is most people are totally unprepared on how to run a company and they're not taught anywhere, and so they're totally off the wrong track. So, I mean, college is great. It's great for experience. You get to learn and broaden your mind. But in terms of running a business, it's not tremendously useful.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I was thinking, that oftentimes, people say, I want to go back to school to, learn how to run a business, but a lot of times that they don't. Like you were saying, you learn the experience, you learn how to become that good employee. But then when it comes to managing people and how to leverage your business and how to be profitable and all the things, as entrepreneurs, both of us being entrepreneurs, all those little nuggets and things that you didn't think about, like, oh my gosh, I have to do this too. And oh my goodness, I have to do that too. It's something that you end up learning sometimes through trial and error, which is, to the detriment of you and your business. Yes. And then there's times that you end up hiring a business coach or someone who can actually take you through those steps. So if you were to go back while you were in school, what thing would you say that would be necessary to add as a course or something that you wish you would have learned before you got out into the real world, I should say?
Yeah, I think there's two things that I think are fundamental for a business that at the smallest business level, people just don't think about that. And the first one would be profitability. Like really taking into account like how much profit you should be having. Because if you don't have profit, you just can't grow and you can't even sustain yourself. You're at risk of going out of business. That's where, a good business should have, just like a budget, should have enough money to sustain you through rough times like we're going through now. And so that's not really hit on at all, which is, probably because if you're working for a large corporation, they already have executives and accountants and CFOs and everything else to take care of that. And then kind of a corollary to that is the cash flow. So when is money coming in? When is it going out? That's just as important as profitability, because you could have, a 30% profit, but if the money's not coming for a year, and say you're making some huge industrial thing, and for whatever reason there's delayed payments, or people don't pay on time, then you're really in trouble. And so it's just looking at those two things and it's really simple the way I think about it. How much, like what is the profit, and when is it coming in? So it's really just two questions. How much, when? That's it.
Yeah. So how do you teach other people how to actually become profitable in their business, especially those small business owners? Because that's your mission, is to really make sure that small business owners and entrepreneurs don't ever have to go through not being sure of their cash flow and being profitable, and even how to leverage their expertise as well as their business.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a whole framework I created to help with that. But a lot of times I'll point them in the direction of a fantastic book. So one of my favorite authors is Michael Michalowicz. He's got a book called Profit First. So that's kind of like required reading if you're going to be an entrepreneur, but it teaches a lot of these principles, like you should have at least, 10, 15% profitability in a company, not including your own salary. Because a lot of times sole entrepreneurs in particular will say, oh, I am profitable, I'm paying myself. But you have to think like you're going to sell your business. Because here's the other tragic thing that happens all the time. And this is even a worse circumstance. Like, as bad as it is going out of business, I think a worse situation is to kind of be in stagnant for like years. And then you hit 65, you try to sell your business and you find out it's not worth anything. Like that's kind of even worse situation. And unfortunately, so I see this all the time. So many business owners are in that position because they don't have a business that's worth anything. They think it's worth something, but if they're the central part of that business, they don't have systems, they don't have processes, they can't have predictable revenue, they have no recurring revenue or income, they really are in a difficult position. And that's an even worse situation because at that point, it's too late to do anything. And so I work with a lot and speak with a lot of people that help sell businesses. And so many times people go to them and it's like too late. They should have been thinking about this 5 years ago, not now. So there's just, my heart really aches for small business owners because there's so many traps that they don't even know about. And that's why I always say people get hurt by what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And that's the part that's really dangerous.
Yeah. Are you able to share some of the things that business owners need to look out for in order to avoid those traps?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of having a saleable business and having a business that's profitable and has cash flow, I mean, you really want to have good systems in place. So I would think about creating a business almost like a franchise. So you want to have everything documented. You want to have, probably the most important thing is having predictable revenue. And so if you don't have any kind of, like you have no idea where your next dollar is coming from, then that's a problem. And so one of the things I put in all my companies is recurring revenue. That means you sell something once and money's always coming in, like a subscription. So I do a lot of memberships on my agency because I have a marketing agency as well. That's all monthly recurring income. And it just gives you a lot of stability, and so that's a key item. Having good record keeping is very important. So all these things come into play. And a lot of it, I've been fortunate enough to be on acquisitions. So I actually did, I was on a team about 7 years ago that did a $400 million acquisition. So I learned a tremendous amount with that because I was kind of involved in the process and just kind of saw exactly what the kind of things that are looked for at that level. But, proprietary technology, proprietary systems, anything that's unique to you. And then the kind of the core thing is what's your value proposition. So, a big part of a business is, because what I was just, a lot of the stuff I was just talking about is more like if you're getting ready to sell the company. Say you're a startup. The first goal you want to have there is understanding, do you have something that's valuable? Like you want to take a business from where they are, or a customer or client, a buyer, from where they are to where they want to be. And that the bridge between that is what I call the results bridge. It's your value you bring to the market. So the first question you want to have is, do you have a product that's valuable? And if you're in Silicon Valley, and the language they use there is product market fit. So the first question you want to have before all this other stuff, you want to make sure you have a solid business that actually solves a problem. And that's known, the terminology, you can Google it, is product market fit. In other words, you want to have a product that's appealing to the market, that adds value to that market, that drives you a profit. Because that's really the job of marketing, is to, and this is not to get on a rant here, this is another area that's totally neglected. Like when you say marketing, people think of marketing as advertising, or I'm doing SEO, I'm doing podcasting. In reality, if you look at the definitions of marketing from some of the grandfathers of this, like Coulter, Philip Coulter literally wrote the college textbooks about marketing. He really talks about serving customers and fulfilling their needs and doing it at a profit. Like a lot of the terminology of marketing definitions talk about doing it at a profit. So all those definitions all got lost. Why? Who knows? Is it because a lot of agencies get compensated based on ad dollars, and so they tell you marketing is about advertising? I don't know. But the reality is marketing is really about good business fundamentals, which include profitability, knowing your audience, having a value proposition, all those kinds of things. So that would be my kind of long-winded answer. Short term, product market fit, something that adds value. Longer term, for a business that wants to sell, systems, processes, predictable revenue.
So it's basically like, say it's a person who is a business coach, not necessarily like product, like physical products, but you have your expertise and you're providing value to someone. So they're investing in their own ability to, say, get better, heal, fitness or whatever. And so of course there's that that product. So you are providing a service that is going to help them, and then they're investing in themselves. Correct. And that's provides profit.
Yes,
in a nutshell.
Exactly. Yeah. So product is kind of a loosely meant term. It's not specifically a product, but you bring up an interesting point when you talk about service-based businesses. One of the best things a service-based business can do is called productization. So what you want to do, ideally, is if you have a service-based business, is turn it into a product. That means it's got a predictable number of deliverables. It's got a definition to it. So that's a trap that people fall into all the time. If they're coaches and consultants and so forth, they don't productize. So I believe, service-based businesses should actually be a product. Yeah. And conversely, service-based business or product-based businesses should think, or service-based businesses should think of productization. Productized businesses should add service. So they kind of intertwine.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of your online courses, like right now, online courses it's like almost, it's a $300 billion industry that's going to be growing more and more, because especially now with everything transitioning online, I mean, we already were having things where people were doing online courses, but you have more people that don't want to go outside. I'd rather work, like I have my own gym in my house. I'd rather work out in my own comfort of my home instead of me going to some gym. And I'm now, especially nowadays, I'm not sure what that person has. I have my elliptical and my, bike and my spinner and all that stuff here in my basement. So I rather work out at home. But it's kind of like that same thing where you have learned how to take and monetize and go where your clients are. And so if your clients are home, as a coach myself, I have online courses. I have things that packages and things that I teach my clients where I've turned it into a product, as you were saying, so that way it makes it more profitable. Kind of like absolutely. In a nutshell.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of businesses do lose, where they are doing a lot of, like you were talking about earlier, doing a lot of one-on-one. They're not making themselves scalable because of, or leveraging is the other term, because of the fact that if they're not involved in it, then they pretty much don't have a business. Right. Whereas somebody else can come in and buy it and take your courses and take what you have and either, tweak it, add on to it, or just could take your whole company the way you have it, along with everything you provide, and keep moving with it.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
So kind of like in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you learned from your experience working with these big companies and Fortune 500 companies?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of some of the things we discussed were big, like having systems, having processes. But let me share what the difference is between different levels. So I've been fortunate to work, with six-figure companies, 7, 8, 9. I don't even know how many digits some of those companies are, the big ones, but it's a lot, 13 or something. And so what I found is the difference between, the 6 and 7 figures. The 6 and 7 figure companies don't really have systems or processes down at all, and they're kind of winging it. As you get towards a million, there's much more predictability. Like the thing we've been talking about a lot, like predictable revenue is huge, but they also have more operational capacity. They're more systematized, and they just have a lot more going for them from that process, that perspective. As it starts going up more, into more digits, you're starting to get more automation. So there's a lot more automated sequences, and you're starting to get into marketing automation, email, all these things that are automated. And then after that, I find the biggest companies, like the $100 million companies, are really leveraging more software. They become more software companies. And it depends on the kind of company. Obviously, it could be a manufacturer. Those would be under different constraints in terms of their size. But that's the general way to think about it. Is like the small fries really have nothing going on. The slightly bigger ones have more systems and processes. As it gets bigger, it becomes more and more automated, and to the point where it's almost like a software company. Now, you can still be a big company and have lots of, I had this conversation actually earlier today. There's a lot of companies that are big they're big because they have a lot of fixed assets. Fixed assets are like the, costly things they have. So think airlines, hotels, manufacturers. They can be tremendously large. The problem is businesses like that are not worth as much. Why? Just take a look at the environment we're in now. Those are huge liabilities. So as much as they could be an asset, they're a huge liability. So for instance, the jets, they're not flying right now, right? But they still have to be maintained at tremendous costs. So smart companies, and you might wonder, how does this apply? This is great for the Fortune 500 companies. How does this apply to small business? Well, the idea is we have a huge advantage because we can be more nimble, and we also don't have those huge cost infrastructures. I mean, we can work from home now. Technology has come along, so it can be a huge thing that makes your business more valuable. So don't think you have to, like for me, I had a physical office where I had a team, all this, and I made the decision back in October, before all this happened, to close the office, downsize a little bit, so I could be more profitable. So things like that, I think, is where we apply it to the small business level.
Yeah, and you're talking about jets. Where I live, there's actually a big company that's what they do. They have like over 1,500 jets just sitting there in their yard because they're not flying, and they have only one that they're working on. But what they chose to do is make a big, huge pivotal shifts, and now they're making ventilators, because they're going to the times. I mean, they have the equipment, they have a lot of the software, things that use, and now they're changing it to meet the demands and the needs of the community, and what's happening in the world. And so that's one of those things of making, pivotal shifts that you'll have to make in your life as well, especially in your business, in order to accommodate and continue to grow and continue to allow yourself to be profitable and not shut down. Because I also saw where one company, they have been doing very well for 10 years. And then soon as COVID-19 occurred, they literally had to close their door after 10 years of being very lucrative, making really good money, but they didn't have, like we were talking about earlier, those systems in place. They didn't have, things that was scalable. And it just basically was like, well, if we can't have people come in and we can't do anything outside, we have nothing. So it makes a big, huge difference.
Yeah, it's kind of like the story of the big bad wolf, blowing on the houses. Like, do you have the house of brick, or do you have the house of sticks? Or, it's like you want to have a stable business to, and the kind of the theme I've been working through a lot is resiliency. A lot of this is not just how do you make a business that can grow and scale, but also how do you make a business that's resilient, and so some of the things I talked about is exactly how you do that.
Yeah. So are you able to take steps with the listeners and the ones that are viewing this online for someone who they're listening, they're like, ooh, I don't have any of those things in place.
Yeah.
I am not even sure where to start. Where would you recommend be the first thing that the small business owner definitely want to have in order to start moving into the right direction?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So let me tell you a story. So one of the inspirations for me was my mother, because she went through a pandemic in the late 30s. So she, when she was just 9 months old, she contracted polio. And so she was not able to walk from the time she was 9 months old all the way up to 14. And so I asked her, I said, how did you survive that? Because, couldn't communicate with people, quarantine, a lot of the stuff that's going on now. And even back then they had ventilators that were called iron lungs. So it's just a very trying time. And so she's always been an inspiration. That's why, getting through the difficult times, with losing the home and all those things like that, she's always been pretty solid. Now, everyone has rough times, but in general, much more resiliency than the average person. So I said, how do you do that? And she really shared, and the life lesson I take with everybody I coach or consult is that you have to take small steps. And that's actually the name of my book I have coming out, because it's based on that concept of how to be resilient by taking small steps. And really, there's 3 areas to focus on in terms of steps. The first one is what steps to take. So back when she was dealing with these situations, the first thing you do is evaluate what the problem is and then figure out how to help her, walk. And so they had her working with like pottery, swimming, different things to build up the muscles and the nerve system so she could eventually walk. And she also took small steps. So it's like a little bit each day so you're not overwhelmed. And so the framework I created and how it applies to business is first, know what steps to take. So that's important because most people start with step number 2, which is how to take the steps. So everybody's always saying, how do I do podcasting? How do I do SEO? How do I do, email, whatever the situation may be? When the first question they should be asking, which is what the best companies do, they first start with the what, and really the why. It even gets down to the why. But the why is so important. And that is really looking at your strategy. What is your strategy? What is your plan for moving forward? And then from there, you look at how to do it. And then finally, the third step is to take action. So my advice, to be specific, would be to start with the what steps you have to take. And so what that means is saying, what do you want to accomplish? Because if you want to grow, a $500,000 business, which is a pretty good business, depending on what you want, that's going to be different than if you say a $5 million business. And also, what's your lifestyle needs? What do you want? That's the first question to ask. And then you figure out how you're going to get there. But don't start doing the how until you first define your vision, what your mission is, what your purpose is. So as you can, hopefully, as we talk here, you understand I'm very clear on what my mission is and, what I'm here for, what my purpose is, democratize, all these things. That did not just come out of the air. I spent a lot of time thinking about, praying about it, just really focusing on what that is. And that's where I suggest people start. And that's what the best companies do too.
And that's great advice, honestly. And that's exactly, when you talk about that, where to start, I was going to say, most people do start with the number 2. Most people want to get into the action, how do I do this, and they ask the what part of it, but it's more coming from what do I need to do next instead of stopping and sitting still, and whether it's praying or meditating or whatever have to do to get grounded, to really figure out what is it that they want to achieve? What do they want it to outcome? What are things that are stopping them? What are their fears? What's their limiting beliefs? Like all the what's, get all those little things out, like just brain dump them. And then that way you have a clear picture of where you want to go next.
Exactly.
And that's why I always start with every last one of my clients as well with mindset. Like literally, it's starting from, so I can really have a clear understanding when someone says to me, I want to make 7 figures, but they don't believe they're going to make 7 figures. They have all these doubts and they don't really have a foundation. Like you were saying, they don't really have the what's the small little micro thing that I need to do in order to get to that $1 million? Lifestyle changes, what things do, what needs to happen?
Yeah.
So I love those 3 steps. That right there is super powerful. That really helps a business owner sit down and, like, your first step, all your listeners, is when you said that you want to get to the next level, start where you are and figure out what the what is, and then go from the act, what else needs to go next. And so that's great.
Yeah,
That's
one
great.
thing I always say is you have to slow down to speed up. And so I learned this actually, in addition to getting a business degree, I actually got a music degree. So I used to be a professional violinist. And so when I was in school with my teacher, I used to just want to, like, get to the good stuff. Like, give me the melody, let me play that, and I'll be happy. And I'll just kind of fluff all the hard stuff. And what I learned is you have to slow down to speed up. You have to break things down. Again, small steps. You have to break it down, practice, be diligent, and then you can speed up. What you said, which is so true, is people want to get right into the action. The problem is, if you don't define the what first, you're probably taking the wrong action, which is wasting time, money, and effort. Like, as a business owner, have you ever hired the wrong person? Have you ever wasted money in advertising? Have you ever, had the wrong offer? Well, guess what? That's probably because you didn't think about the what first. So it's not just, it's actually slowing you down by not doing the process the right way.
Yeah, so many people want to just, they'll hear something and they go, oh my God, I need to be doing that. And they'll go spend their money on doing that without that, even whatever that is, not even being part of their business model, and would really help them, be lucrative and be, profitable in their business. But, when you talk about playing, I used to play the flute, and one of the things that you have to learn is your scales. Like, I still can play my scales today, and it's been, gosh, I started playing my flute when I was in 4th grade, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna date myself, but I'm getting up.
Yeah. You remember that stuff.
5-0 is closer than it is not, like in another year and like couple months. So let's just say that. But honestly, it's like knowing those scales, and now I can learn my scales through my flute, and all the other stuff is something that I'll never forget, because your scales is the foundation of so many other things. And that's what step 1 is. Basically, in a nutshell, what we're saying is lay a solid foundation, because guess what? When you have a solid foundation based on everything that Tony's been sharing with you, when your foundation is strong, if you have to take and make a pivotal shift and rebuild, guess what? It's easier to make that shift because your foundation is strong, and you can change directions or add more onto it and still be solid, instead of having to uproot everything when you don't have that strong foundation.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. And basically, like you were saying, like, you knew how to do some business stuff, but when you started your bakery again, there was so many the foundational pieces that you were missing. So how has those experiences helped you with your business now?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're so right. Like, I was doing the how. So when I started I mentioned I won the best new product at the New York Incentive Show with that business. The problem is we weren't ready for that. Like, we won the product, but I didn't have the systems in place to follow up with we got a ton of leads. I didn't have the systems to follow up. So it was months, some weeks later to get in front of, just a lot of mistakes like that. So, so I've learned a lot with that. And trade shows in New York City are very expensive. So what have I learned? Well, starts, smaller, test the market, make sure you have the systems in place before you do a big event, like things like that. I just didn't know what I was doing back then. So I'm a lot wiser now, a lot more diligent, and have focused on building the processes and the systems before I do anything like that. So just
and that's a really big nugget, because you said you didn't have systems in place to handle all the leads. And unfortunately, I see a lot of small businesses do that. They don't have that foundation. And so they'll get all these leads, all these people are calling them, and they're like, whoa, I was not ready for that. I actually saw, in one of my groups, someone had posted that they accidentally started their ad. Like, they don't know how to do ads. They just heard someone else talk about them. So they put it out there and they said, okay, I'm going to test it for $1. Well, they got all these different people that went after that, and they're like, holy crap, wait, we weren't ready to release our funnel. Wait, we weren't, like, they literally, she started panicking because she was like, what do I do? Like, I just know that you said to do the ad, but I didn't get the part of what to do once I got people buying. And it's like, because you didn't have a clear, it's like, they're taking and cutting and pasting little pieces and not really having that strong foundation of what do I, okay, once this happens, I'm ready for this. Having that systems in place is super huge. So I literally just saw that the other day in one of the groups that I'm a part of, and I was just like, wow, okay.
And
that sucks.
It's tough. And I would say the other thing is I didn't understand profitability. So we had narrow margins, and the cost of mailing a cake was super expensive because we had to use FedEx and dry ice and all these things. FedEx and UPS raised their prices a little bit, and there went our margin completely. So I wasn't able to pivot or prepare, and it just totally. So, I've learned a lot more about profitability and how to make sure you're profitable and things like that. And again, it's just a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And either, you need a coach, you need a consultant, you need someone to mentor you, someone that's been down that road, because figuring out on your own is super expensive.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I always say that, with my clients that are, that have been successful, but now they're making pivotal shifts. I help them go avoid the trial and error. That way they don't have to go through, let me try this and let me add a little bit of this. No, let me figure out, where you are and use your own personality and your mindset to help you get there. So that way there's none of that. Let's throw some spaghetti on the walls, hope it sticks. And then that's what we go with. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tony, so if someone wants to follow you, get in touch with you, because I understand that you now have an actual membership that you actually just executed as well to help those business owners and entrepreneurs that have questions about growth and profitability. How can they connect with you, and how can they be a part of your membership?
Yeah, so great question. So the membership is resultsclub.org. You go there, and it's a monthly membership. People can get access to me directly to ask any questions they have if they're stuck in sales or if they're stuck in marketing. Those are the kind of areas I focus on. But I'm also going to have guests like you, hopefully, to come on. You can
definitely
speak to people. We'll have experts in legal, HR. So my goal is to fill in any of the gaps that people, again, they don't know. Now nobody will have that excuse because they can go in here and get the answers from whoever they need help with. And so that's the model. If there's areas that you have questions about that I wasn't able to address today, you're more than welcome to email me. It's Tony@MeetTonyG. And then some of the stories I shared here today are in a manifesto. So I have a book coming out. I think we talked about last time we chatted. That's coming out later this summer. And that's called Small Steps to Grow Profits. But I put the best parts of the book into a manifesto for free. And so if anyone wants to hear my story, my mother's story, any of these stories I shared today, it's at smallstepsmanifesto.com. There's no form. Like, I just want people to have it. So I'm not going to get your email address or anything. It's literally just there for the taking.
Small Steps Manifesto. And I actually will put all that in the show notes so that way people can actually download it and follow back up and see exactly how to get in touch with you. And so besides just your membership, are you on any type of a website or any form of social media?
Yes, I am pretty much everywhere. My website is Meet Tony G, because no one can spell my last name. So meettonyg.com. You go there and you can get access to all my social media handles right there.
Great. And any last words that you want to have for the listeners, because you have so much great information that you want to share. And of course, we only have a short period of time for them to get all those juicy nuggets. So you definitely want to connect with Tony so that way you can get even more details, and that way we can continue to support you. Any last words for everyone?
Yeah, I would just want to encourage people to say none of us have it together. I mean, I am not perfect. I make mistakes daily. Just ask my kids or my wife; they'll attest to that. But the most important thing is to move forward and take small steps. That way, you're not overwhelmed. Just make one little difference in your life and your business each day, and eventually you'll get to where you want to be.
Yeah, and on that note, there's not much more to say. So, Tony, thank you so much for dropping some serious nuggets and helping small business owners and entrepreneurs be able to be more lucrative, profitable in their business, how to leverage, how to scale. You've shared some really great information. And this is not only just coming from reading books, but your personal experience, your personal life, as well as things that you got to experience and see when you work with these big corporations. So once again, thank you for so much, everyone, for joining me for another episode. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks again, Tony.
Thanks. Bye-bye.